doing equity work from a leadership perspective. So I
Yeah.
want to start off by kind of getting your thoughts regarding systematizing. What does that look like when it comes to doing equity work?
So I started doing racial equity work as a building principal. And when I left my building, I saw how quickly the next principal was able to dismantle a lot of the work that I had done and put in place. Unfortunately, I hadn't left enough systems to survive my departure and continue the work. So when I became the director of educational equity and access for the Salt Lake City School District, the first thing I did was sit and talk with the superintendent and my supervisor and say, we need to engage in an equity work from a perspective of systemic paradigm shift. Equity cannot be an initiative. Equity cannot be a program. Equity is definitely not a curriculum. It must be a systemic paradigm shift from the superintendent and the board all the way down throughout the organization. Everybody has to be engaged in delivering equity work. If equity happens only because I enter the room, then I'm not doing my job, and that's not equity. So she agreed, and we started out with, what do we even mean by equity? The vision for Salt Lake City is equity and excellence. What does that mean? Do we have a definition? They did not. Um, they had actually 7 different definitions, one for each board member,
Wow.
and then another one for the superintendent, and then another one for me. So that was the first thing. We needed a definition that everyone in the system knew that that's what we meant by equity within the Salt Lake City School District. And I will tell you, before I left Salt Lake, the board formally adopted the definition that we put forward. They formally adopted it, and they became the first school district in the state of Utah to have a formally adopted equity definition for the district. So I give kudos to that board for doing that. Um, we didn't go with a graphic, the graphic with the fences or the apples or the
Oh,
bike,
I hate
whatever.
that.
I know. I was
I
like,
hate
no,
it.
that's not what we mean. And to be honest with you, I had a committee. I was very clear with the superintendent. There's 7 negotiating associations in that district. And I said, I need a member from each negotiating association. So I had custodial, transportation, nutrition services, teachers, administrators, classified, secretarial. They were all represented on my committee. And the person who represented transportation was actually a trans woman, who in the process of this work was able to change her birth certificate and her driver's license. So we were able to celebrate with her that milestone. But that group of people, I mean, there were 15 of us. It took us 4 2-hour meetings to debate what the definition should include. And I could not interrupt that dialogue because we all had to agree on the definition, take it back to the people that they were representing, bring it back, wordsmith it. So it was that important that everybody in the district know this is what we mean by equity. And then once we had that definition, we built the framework around the definition. And the next step, if I were still there, would have been to develop the strategic plan around the definition and the framework. So that's what I meant by we have to systematize it so that it permeates the organization.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Just going back to your comments regarding that graphic here, for those who aren't familiar, this is the one. I hate this one. I have so many reasons why I hate this topic, or this image, if you will. My main issue with this image is, why don't you just give them tickets to the game, To me, that's the equity piece where you got. I mean, they're still watching from behind the fence, so
Right,
everybody in the stands still has the privilege of watching the game. So we don't discuss that. My thing is give them if let's say it costs $10 to get in this game. If the first person on the left, if they need $5, if someone else needs $4, someone else needs $10, that's the equity, but they got in the game. And so
right.
that's all. That's my issue with this graphic. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have several issues with this one, and like I said, it morphed into the apple tree, and now it's morphed into
Yeah,
the bicycle. Um, no matter what graphic we use and how we paint it, you're right. It just opened up the stadium.
yeah.
And yes, some people are going to sit in the nosebleeds, and some people are going to sit. I'm gonna relate this to football because we are a football family and we're Raider fans. Don't hold that against us.
I didn't say
But
nothing.
some people, some people are on the 50-yard line, and some people are up in the nosebleeds. But you get to see the game from different perspectives, so that brings
Mhm.
in multiple perspectives. And then you have the jumbotron, so
Yeah,
that no matter where you're sitting in the stadium, you can look at the jumbotron and still have a really good view. Right.
absolutely.
So, yeah, I'm with you. We did not use these graphics, didn't want to refer to
Good.
them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, okay, the thing that I like about this is, I would say this. Now, school leadership is different. Like principals, you'll see a principal that's been there 10 years and 10 plus years they've been a principal or maybe assistant principal leadership positions. Superintendents may not last as long. You don't see a lot of superintendents that have been around for 10 years and those kind of things. But I see that a lot of positions, for example, DEI positions, I'm the folks that I interact with, the folks that I work with, it's 2 to 3 years has been kind of the average that I'm seeing when it comes to doing equity work. And so what I'm seeing is you have someone fired up, brand new, hired for the position. They're fired up. They're excited for the opportunity. Year one may or may not go well, but then like I said, by the second or third year, we're replacing them, or they move on to another position, things like that. So I like the idea of systematizing because all the work, all the stuff that was done, um, sometimes can go away when a new
Yes.
person comes in, or they don't replace that person for another year, or it takes a while for those kind of things to come to happen. And so the work who ultimately gets impacted are the students, right? The students are the ones who suffer with the change and transitions and things. So if I know that it's not just up to DEI leadership, but it also requires your whoever your building leader. Um, but what are your thoughts in regards to, again, maintaining a plan, whether that person is there or they're not there?
So I will tell you that burnout, DEI burnout, is real.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced it. I was a department of one when it came to equity. And then I also had sub departments. I had refugee services, I had family and community engagement. So it wasn't just equity that I was focused on. But in the equity department, I was a department of one. That's the case for most people. People who have, multiple specialists or whatnot are very, very fortunate because that's typically not the case. Um, when you're somebody would send me an invite and say, "Hey, Berenice, we need you at this meeting because we need to talk about equity." I would say, "Well, why aren't you talking about equity?
Yeah.
Why do I need to be in the meeting for equity to be there?" So that was my response often, like, no, I'm not going to be your equity token. You can talk about equity. You need to
Mm-hmm.
be uncomfortable. So I had to build a lot of that capacity, and people are afraid, justifiably so. You can't say, I'm attending the Council of Great City Schools conference, and I was in a session and said, we can't say SEL in Florida. And I thought, oh, goodness gracious. And I just said it, and I'm sitting here in Orlando, SEL, right? So you can't burn your people out, and you can't make that person the guru, the expert. Everybody has to jump into this work. But that's why there needs to be an organizational paradigm shift so that people don't see it's this one person. And typically, it's a woman or a man of color,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we get tokenized in multiple ways. So I'm not going to go on that soapbox, but if we start to push back and start to build the capacity of everybody, and I will tell you in Salt Lake, I'm going to shout her out. I don't know if she's listening right now or she might listen later, but our MTSS and SEL director, Emily Sutherland, who is a white woman, was an incredible ally. And she took that on after she and I had a discussion about Bettina Love and being a co-conspirator. And I said, Emily, I need you to be my co-conspirator. I need you to leverage your whiteness, because as a white woman, they're going to listen to you before they listen to me as a brown girl. And it's always like, why am I a brown girl? Why am I not a brown woman? Why does she get to be a white woman? So there's all those kinds of dynamics, right? But having a co-conspirator who would speak up also helped to build the capacity. So I may be deviating from your question. You have to have those people. And I will tell you, of all of my employee groups, it was the custodial group who ran with the equity work. They were doing equity audits in their department without really a lot of guidance. They took off gathering data and doing all kinds of stuff. But the custodial group in that district was also the most diverse. And I hate that word, because what that means is they were the most brown and black group. Yeah. Of course, right? Your custodians, your maintenance, your trades are going to be men and women of color. And they did phenomenal work that I wish all departments had done, because that's what we were aiming for. The like I said, permeate the organization so that everybody's engaged in the work. Everybody.
One of the things that you mentioned early on in your response was, and we see this a lot, those DEI positions, it's the party of one. And like you said, I've seen it at the district level, and I'm like, this is a large district. You got thousands of kids, and they're literally responsible or called in for every single thing outside of academic support. Okay, if it has to do with race, if it has to do with gender, if it has to do with LGBTQ plus, if it has to do whatever, language, all these different things, special education, like all these different things, they're called in to do it, and it's just them, and no staff. And then they do all the PDs as well. Yes. And then they don't have any hiring or firing authority. So while they're in these positions, they can highly encourage teachers to do certain things, but there really isn't any, I can highly encourage you to do it, but I can't make you do it. And so still there's a lot of push. And again, that's where that burnout comes in. Honestly, Berenice, I'm a little nervous for you, because when you said this is what I do over at Albuquerque, you named about 15 different departments that you oversee. So I worry, like, did you set yourself up for another opportunity for you to feel burnout, or do you have a team in your position to where you feel like you have that support?
So Albuquerque is about 3 times the size of Salt Lake City. I have a department. My equity department actually has several individuals. We have several equity specialists.
Good.
The difference being, my superintendent is incredibly supportive and invested in this, as is the board. Unfortunately, when I was in Salt Lake, I was there for 4 years, and I had 4 different superintendents.
Wow.
So that should tell you a little bit about the instability of that district. And I told my previous supervisor, she said, she might be watching as well, that I was going to be very candid, that that's a dysfunctional board. And so here in Albuquerque, we're not there. 2 of the pillars of the strategic plan specifically address equity. So a lot of the work that I was trying to do there has already happened here. And so that's a good thing. Is Albuquerque rocking it with equity? No, there's room to grow.
Oh yeah, always.
But the superintendent recognizes it, the board recognizes it, and the other piece about New Mexico that I don't know if you know this, but New Mexico was sued, and they have this Martinez Yazzie lawsuit. So they were sued by the tribes and the Latino community, and they won because it was proved that the state of New Mexico has done a really poor job of educating indigenous children and children of color. And so we have this lawsuit and that spurred legislation, and we are held accountable to Martinez Yazzie.
Mm.
I love that. When they interviewed me, I actually said to the interview committee, I wish every state would get sued so that there would be these sanctions and we would have to be accountable. But is it perfect? No. But at least it's something that's constantly being analyzed and looked at. And there's accountability, which is the other piece of systematizing equity. If there's no accountability for it,
Mm.
then it's not going to happen.